I was pregnant with twins. And right away, I started bleeding and I ended up miscarrying one of the twins. We're like, okay, we still have a baby. We're like thankful for that. And then a couple weeks later, I miscarried the second twin. So again, the loss, the devastation. And we're like, is this ever going to happen? When we got home from the hospital, friends of ours came over and they had lost a child as well. It was so beautiful. I'm so thankful to them. When she was down, he would lift her up. When he was down, she would lift him up. And they said, you'll find those times where you're not grieving together. The adoption of Bo really helped heal us and made me realize that I didn't have to carry a child for the baby to be ours.
We raised 3 kids in Bo, Bella, and Stone that love and honor their older brothers and sister. As parents, something that we've done well is developing their hearts to love siblings that they never met. I tell our kids, I don't even remember how I loved your mom back then, because it can't be as much as I love her now. The layers made it better. To look at a tragic situation with gratitude is something that you really gotta wanna do. You don't stumble your way into that. We wanted their legacy to be more than a tragic event that no one could talk about, and have their lives be purposeful.
So welcome, everybody. This is a very special episode of Love and Infertility. Ginny and I have been really, really excited to talk with Johnny and Susan Sirpilla, and they are just a beautiful, amazing couple, have an incredible story, and we're really, really excited to unpack their journey today, and our hope and our prayers that it connects with you, and that you hear something from their story that connects with your story, with your spouse. So what I'd like to do is just kind of introduce Johnny and Susan, and then I'm going to do a quick little meditation to set the tone for our time together, and we're just going to jump in. So Johnny and Susan's story is one of love, loss, resilience, and deep faith. College sweethearts who married young. They dreamed of a big family, a dream that led them through a long and winding journey of infertility, IVF, and adoption, and unimaginable heartbreak along the way. Their triplets, Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, were born prematurely and lived only brief, sacred moments in their arms. And that loss became a defining turning point, shaping both their family and their purpose. So together, Johnny and Susan rebuilt their lives through grief, choosing compassion and hope instead of despair. They went on to adopt, to parent, and to pour themselves into their community. Johnny built a successful career as an entrepreneur, executive, and later an author and speaker, telling the story of their family's journey in his book, Life is Hard, But I'll Be Okay. By the way, side note, everybody, wonderful book. Please read the book. It's incredible. Susan, steady and faithful, has been the anchor of their family, a source of strength through medical challenges, including her own battle with breast cancer. Today, the Sirpillas are known not just for their accomplishments, but for their willingness to share their story so others feel less alone, and that's including you, the listener, today. Their life together is a testament of healing, purpose, and the belief that even through profound loss, hope can rise again. So Johnny and Susan, welcome to the show. We are really, really, really glad you're here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned earlier, I would love to start just by doing a little meditation today, just to kind of set the tone for our time together, and we'll get after it. So let's take a quiet breath together. In this moment, we pause to honor 3 precious lives, Nicholas, Mary, and Peter, whose presence, though physically brief, left a permanent imprint of love. We honor them, and we honor all the little ones lost every day, the babies held only in the heart, the ones whose names were never spoken aloud, and the ones whose futures were dreamed long before they arrived. We also hold space for another kind of grief, the loss of a hoped-for parenthood through infertility. The invisible ache, the rewoven dreams, the daily courage it takes just to keep going. So as you listen today, may you feel seen, may you feel accompanied, and may you know that your love, your longing, and your story matter. Take one more breath and let us move forward together gently.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah, great way to start.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So we obviously we've got so much to unpack today with your story. There's so much heartache, but also beauty and courage and resilience. And one of the most beautiful things is your togetherness and how your love together when you met all those years ago in that bar on that college campus, that love carried you through all those difficult seasons of life. So, Ginny, why don't you start us out with our first question?
So, Johnny and Susan, I wonder if you could start by telling us your story of infertility.
We got married when we were 24, so we were pretty young. And at first, we kind of thought, we'll wait till we have kids. We had nieces and nephews, but we thought we'll kind of wait. Well, then some of our friends started having kids. So we thought, well, maybe, we kind of wanted to go on that journey with them. And so we decided we were going to try, but we weren't going to tell anybody. So nobody knew that we were even trying. And I'm a little bit more patient than my husband is. And so it wasn't working right away. And, we were kind of surprised by that. And so, I don't know, was it like maybe 6-9 months? I think then we went to a fertility specialist, and we started with insemination. Inseminations weren't working. At this point, still nobody knew what we were going through. And if anybody's been through infertility, you know how difficult it is because everybody around you seems to be pregnant. You're in a mall and you see, all these young girls that are pregnant and thinking, okay, why is this not happening? We did inseminations probably almost a year. Yeah. And the doctor was like, I think at this point you need to go to in vitro. And so we decided to go on that journey. And that is quite a tenuous journey. I remember the first shot Johnny had to give me, he cried. And to think that, you have to do that to try to start your family is really not what we were planning on. So, we went through that and actually had quite a bit of success in terms of how many eggs I produced. It's a lot different now from people that we know that are going through in vitro. It seems like people don't produce as many eggs. I think I produced 24 eggs. And out of the 24, 23 fertilized. So we had, which was great. We had a lot. And in that period of time, you went through, it was really, unknown of why we were having an issue. So Johnny started getting tested too. And you want to tell him about your tests?
Well, that kind of speaks a little bit to the tensions that can happen and almost a shift in a relationship. But, to finish where Susan left off, in vitro worked. And in our first pregnancy, it was with triplets. It was with Nicholas, Mary, and Peter. And so, we thought at that point, it really made clear the understanding of why we were an infertility couple, because we were meant to be the parent of multiples and especially triplets. A dream that we both had of having twins was made bigger with 3. And so, from that point after their passing, we remained now further broken by not only infertility, but then by child loss. And then after getting through the funeral and all those steps, you realize that we're right back to where we started from. And so, but this time with more daunting view of what the future can be.
You use the word daunting there, Johnny. That's, I think that's an understatement. I think it feels, it could feel incredibly overwhelming. Absolutely. Ginny, did you have something?
I was just thinking about how many layers of loss are in that, and even just the amount of decisions you guys had to make as a couple, trying to decide what was the right fit for you, trying to decide how to proceed in the midst of maybe not necessarily sharing with community at that point. I'm curious what that was like for you guys, like navigating. I know in your book, Johnny, you mentioned that kind of felt like a secret you were holding. But I'm wondering, what was that like for you as a couple, navigating those decisions of, do we proceed with insemination, and then how many times? And then do we move into in vitro? And it was the two of you, and in your faith, I imagine, because you've talked about that. Like, how did you navigate that kind of between the two of you without sharing with your community?
We really leaned on each other, obviously. It was like the secret just between the two of us. And I think it wasn't until after the inseminations weren't working that we decided to bring in family, close friends, just to have that support. And really nobody we knew had gone through this. So in that aspect, we were a little bit alone. Everybody in our faith family, everybody in our immediate family, everybody was so supportive. But it was definitely, you can see I'm getting emotional. It was definitely a really difficult time because, when you want a family, you'll do anything to get a family. And when you feel like it's not happening, and you're thinking, is there something wrong that I'm not supposed to be a mother? So we really leaned on each other. And Johnny is an amazing husband, and he's so emotionally there, where I think sometimes a lot of husbands may not be. And he, grew up with two sisters, so there was a lot of feminine energy in the house, and he was just so supportive of me and never made me feel like it was, my fault that we weren't being able to get pregnant. It was something we were doing together. We were going to get through it together, and we really leaned on our faith. We have a very supportive small faith group among our best friends, and they were truly amazing through all that. And we felt like we got a lot of the support, but we also felt alone because nobody else was going through it either.
And one of the layers in there, Susan mentioned it earlier, with the patience that she has, and patience is not a virtue that I have, not even a little bit of patience. So, for me, month 1 of infertility was maybe to another couple, month 31, right? I mean, it was like, let's go. You set a goal, you work hard, you achieve it. And we have some fun in the process. And, this is going to be, one of those other things that we accomplish. I think one of the things that worked for us is Susan allowed me to be me, which is driving and moving forward, hearing what the doctors were saying. And when it was time for inseminations, that I'm like, let's go. We're going to do that. Where she might be more patient to pause and think about it. So she allowed me to be me, and I allowed her to be her, which was understanding that we each had a role to play. And I knew that my role was not a physical role at all, other than producing the sperm samples that they needed, right? So for me, it was something that I just needed to think of, what can I take off her plate? So I was scheduling all the appointments. I was making sure that, we were on schedule with the drugs and the injections and, all those things, because that's all I could contribute. And she needed to contribute all of her. And so that started us off on the right path, that we just allowed each other to be each other. And of course, there were conversations where she would say, calm down. And I would say, keep fighting, and, we're not stopping. And we just allowed each other to be ourselves.
Guys, that's such a beautiful thing, to hold space for your own, just who each of you are made to be. And it sounds like that what I'm hearing, and this is something that I see a lot in the couple therapy space, for couples that are navigating infertility like us, it's assuming goodwill. We call it the positive perspective, and just knowing that part of you, Johnny, that's driving, that's not here to overshadow me, who's more patient or more, and then vice versa. honoring each other's space and giving each other the roles that we play in building a family because we're doing this together. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. And I think that perfectly leads to the next question. The metaphor that I use a lot of times to describe my own experience of infertility with my wife and I. And I know that before we started recording, we were joking about, being on the wakeboard and having, it looks like water behind you, which I mean, works perfectly for this metaphor. I used to tell people that for me, going through infertility was like being in this tiny little boat and I'm out in the middle of the ocean and the waves are huge. There's a big storm. I feel like I can't make it. I feel like I'm about to, I've always wanted to be a father. My identity is wrapped up into being a dad one day and it might not happen. And I feel these waves crashing over this boat. But then I turn to the back of the boat and there's my wife and she's in the boat with me. And so the metaphor I like to use with that is, some couples turn to the back of the boat and they find that their spouse, their partner's with them and they bail together, they work together. But some people jump ship. They get overwhelmed by it and they jump ship and they drift apart. That leads into the question of what made you guys, or maybe how did you guys look to the back of the boat? Like, what did that look like in your daily interactions when you were going through that season?
When we got home from the hospital, after losing the triplets, friends of ours came over and we did not know this about them, but they had lost a child as well. And so I think, the husband called Johnny and said, hey, we'd like...
They just showed up at the door the night before the funeral.
So anyway, they came over and it was so beautiful. I'm so thankful to them because we didn't know them that well, but they just felt like, I think they knew what could happen to couples that experienced child loss. And they said for them, when she was down, he would lift her up. When he was down, she would lift him up. And they said, you'll find those times where you're not grieving together. And, as your metaphor, somebody's in the back of the boat waiting for you. And, that's stuck with both of us. And, there were times when Johnny would have to pick me up off the floor and he would. And there were times that I would do the same for him. And so we let each other grieve how we needed to grieve because everybody grieves differently. They all need their space to grieve. And, then we were in counseling too. And that was extremely helpful for us. Our psychologist was amazing and has since become a very close friend of ours. And she really helped us, get through that. Because, you never think you're going to have to deal with something like that, in your married life. And we really worked with each other to get through it.
I look back and just see that, we cared so deeply about each other, and almost a cool thing, which isn't the right word to use, but I used it last night at dinner with a friend, that she knew exactly what I was going through and I knew exactly what she was going through. We were the only two that shared the experience from parents' perspective. Others had their thoughts and views, but we knew all the intimate insides of it. And so there's something that I'm going to go back to cool. There's something cool about that connects you, even though it's negative. And my whole book is about, learning to live with gratitude, the power of hope, and emerging through the pain, and then learning to live with gratitude. And so for that, when you're on that journey with somebody, there is a great element to just adding depth to your relationship, that even through the thick of it, we were grateful for each other. We were thanking each other. We were committed to using the right words to affirm each other and make sure that I saw that if I was having a better day and I was a little bit more hopeful for the future, and for whatever day that wasn't working for Susan, that I needed to go right back down where she was without resentment. Like, come on, let me have my good day. It wasn't that. It was because I knew my bad day might be tomorrow or it might be tonight. And so the example that I've talked about a lot is where we would agree to spend less time at the cemetery. And, we kind of have that pact with each other. And then I'd be coming home from work and, just like, I just need 10 minutes with them. I won't stay long. I won't be home, late. And I get to the cemetery and she's already there. And that would just, I'd look at her like, what are you doing, man? You're breaking pack here. We said, and she's like, what are you doing? And, then we, both realized how broken we were and that there was a central place of grounding each other and our kids back together as a family of 5. And we both needed it. And so kind of without judgment, we just started to say, we'll go less when we're ready to go less to the cemetery.
It was something I hear.
That sounds like such a...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ginny.
We keep doing this, Clay. You start again. I'll wait. We get
I
excited. We're like, there's so much here. You go.
So much.
Stop.
So yeah, absolutely. It's something beautiful that I just heard when you guys were talking. It really resonates with the research that I've been doing with couples like us that have gone through infertility. I did a research study a couple years ago. We looked at 902 people going through infertility in couple relationships. And I just threw this variable in there to see what happens. And what we found, the greatest predictor of couple satisfaction through that experience was humility with each other. So, I just hear that so profoundly in your marriage. This, hey, is this what you need right now? Okay, well, I'm willing to make a little bit of a change to support you because, I don't have my ego in the way of saying like, no, like you were saying, Johnny, like, no, like, let me have my good day. It's really being humble with each other to what we call accept influence from each other, to really focus on being there for each other. And I just think, guys, that is such a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing.
Well, when you think about in our marriage vows, when, two become one, that it's literally if she's going through something, that's half of me going through something. So it's not her alone going through it. That's half of me. And each of Nicholas, Mary, and Peter were half of Susan and half of me. I mean, this was all us kind of as one. And they weren't her kids, they were our kids. And so when you think about that, one of the blessings that came from their lives and the legacy that they've given us and our future kids is the fact that as a family, we can really be grateful for that experience because so much good came from it. To look at a tragic situation with gratitude is something that you really got to want to do. You don't stumble your way into that. It takes intent and focus. But we wanted that. We wanted their legacy to be more than a tragic event that no one could talk about and have their lives be purposeful. The amount of time that they lived wasn't going to define the impact that they had on our family, on our community, on our faith, on our relationship, all those things. And so then you get to the point of celebrating that experience and even all those hard times, all those inseminations, all of that made us stronger as a couple. It was part of really who we are and the fabric of our relationship. And I don't know our relationship without that. If it was just all roses from the beginning, which it was until infertility, I don't think we would feel about each other the way we do now. I tell our kids that because our youngest just got married 2 months ago, and when Stone was at that day and the amount of love that he and his wife share, I've said to them, I don't even remember how I loved your mom back then because it can't be as much as I love her now. So it's grown so much that And that's through all these experiences. So I don't remember what that felt like getting married, because it doesn't feel like this. And it was great back then, but this is better. And Ginny, using your term there, the layers made it better. It didn't make it worse. That's what our message really would be to couples, to use this as an opportunity to find depth and more humanity in each other and forgiveness and kindness, because this springboard can really take you up in your relationship. And I know, and a springboard, it also can take you down, but you ultimately, if you commit to going on it together and up, we're just very grateful that we're blessed to be Nicholas, Mary, and Peter's parents.
And it also gave us the privilege
Mhm.
of people after us that suffered through a child loss. And they felt so comfortable talking to us because we went through the same thing. And I can remember calling a friend. Her husband was a physician, and somebody I know, he was a radiologist. Somebody needed to get into a radiologist. So I called her out of the blue, and she had just lost a child at like 23 weeks. And the conversation went from me wanting to ask her if her husband could get our friend in to see him, to us talking about what she was going through. And sometimes I think God puts those people in your path and develops those kinds of relationships that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And then you're bonded through that too. And I think with our children too, it's given them a sense of the strength that their parents have, and that they can get through anything. And that it's so important, especially now with all the depression and anxiety in our world, that they can see we were at the very bottom, and we emerged grateful, and there was definitely light there.
Yeah, I hear you guys holding those pieces of having a perspective of hope, and a perspective of love, and of gratitude, and even noticing the things in the moment that brought you together and gave you moments of hope, like getting your head above water, even when things felt overwhelming, and moving towards a place of intentional gratitude, where now, where you guys are standing, you're able to look back and say, wow, look at the ways that we grew closer together through this experience, or look at the ways we're able to bless other couples by sharing our story and having a sense of what they might have gone through. And I'm hearing you say that you needed to honor the time that it would take you guys to navigate those things, and saying, yeah, we should probably navigate how often we visit the cemetery together so we have space to heal. And then really recognizing and accepting the fact that you weren't ready to cut that back yet, and that's okay. And so I'm even hearing you hold that tension of, here's where we're moving towards in the future. Here's our goal. Here's how we want to live with intention and gratitude and hope in our lives. And also recognizing this is where we're at, and that's okay, right? It's okay to take time to heal and move through that grief. And I'm curious, kind of, you shared your story up to the loss of your triplets, and I'm curious what happened after. What was the rest of that story?
That's
It's
what,
long.
yeah. And what's interesting there is that,
Yeah.
our loss of Nicholas, Mary, and Peter and their passing was really early in the journey. And there's, probably 15 more chapters after that talk about everything else that happened. I think so much of it is, we could brush through it quickly, but there's so much
I
there.
can brush
Yeah,
through it
I can't.
quickly. He can't.
Yeah, I can't go through anything quickly. Go ahead.
So the triplets were born in February of 1995. And so, they implanted 6 embryos. So we still had a lot of embryos left. So in August of 95, we decided we were ready to try again. So I don't remember how many they implanted, maybe 5.
Actually, they implanted 5, and your months are off, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
There's a book to back up all the facts.
It was 31 years ago. So, so some of those details I'm missing. But anyway, I got pregnant then. I was pregnant with twins. And right away, I started bleeding, and I ended up miscarrying one of the twins. So a couple weeks later, we're like, okay, we still have a baby. We're like thankful for that. And then a couple weeks later, I miscarried the second twin. So again, the loss, the devastation. And we're like, is this ever going to happen? And at that point, Johnny's one sister had a neighbor who had adopted children from overseas. And his sister said, why don't you guys change your focus? I was not ready for that conversation. Johnny was. So that was a little bit of a disconnect for us because I was like, adoption really kind of wasn't in my plan. And I wasn't thinking that's where, kind of the way that I wanted to go. And then Johnny is a great salesman. And so he was like, I think we need to change what we're doing because this isn't working for us. And so we ended up talking with this couple. They had adopted a little boy from Guatemala, I think. And so we worked with their adoption agency. And to make a long story short, we said we would be willing to adopt multiples. There were twin girls in Paraguay. And so we jaunt off to Paraguay and we get there and it wasn't what it seemed. And there was they kept saying one of the babies was in the hospital. And we're like, is there really twins? Because we never saw pictures of them together. So we were just it was a little sketchy. And we went to go see the one in the orphanage. And when I say it was in the poorest of the poor, I mean, it was dirt floors, crib after crib of all these babies. I mean, it's like, let us just take all of them home. So it was but it was a little sketchy. And so we were staying with a friend of a family member of a friend of ours from home that lived in Paraguay. And the lawyer we were working with said to us, we have a little boy that was just born. I had to take maybe one of the babies to the hospital. And she said, would you watch this little boy? So we're like, sure. So she brings him over to us. And I mean, how does a baby get put in your arms and you're all like, oh, I love this baby. And so we said, can we adopt this baby? And she was like, yeah, you can. So we're like, this is great. And they're like, well, because with the two twins, we just weren't sure what was going on with that. And then they ended up, there was another little girl that needed a home. And so we were going to adopt then a boy and a girl. And we were thrilled. We named them. We had only girl clothes. So the poor little boy who we named Jake was wearing pink. And they slept in suitcases. And it was, I look back on that time and I think, how did we ever do that? And we were there for a couple of weeks, but we had to come home because in Paraguay, you had to wait 6 months. And we found a missionary couple that could take care of them while we were home getting things ready. And then I was going to come back then to take care of them the rest of that 6 months. And when we got home, we get a call about a week or so later saying that the little girl, Gracie, was not adoptable because she was born because Paraguay closed adoptions to Americans and she was born after the deadline of that. Again, another loss. We were devastated. And, just thinking, how can this be happening again? But we're like, okay, we're going to focus on Jake. And we got updates from the missionary couple. And then the day after Thanksgiving, then I had some medical issues and basically was told I probably wouldn't be able to have children. And the day after Thanksgiving, we had a call from the adoption agency and they said, we just had a little boy that was born in Pennsylvania. And they said, would you be interested in adopting him? And so
let me jump in there for a second. As we move through the adoption, again, this is a moment of grace that Susan gave me. She said I was, a good salesman. I was also an insensitive husband because I called the adoption agency on our way home from the hospital after the miscarriage of the second twin. So on that day, I was moving on to the next step in the new path. And that's one of those moments of tension in a relationship where she was allowing me to be me without being angry at me, without, a lot of noise. it's not like I could even say that I was gracious to her and letting her be patient, because I was insensitive. I was moving on and not grieving the loss. That miscarriage was around 10 weeks, and the second twin was a girl. We didn't know what the first one was. And so that's, again, one of those moments where we're making life-changing decisions, including leaving the country within weeks after the miscarriage of twins, because it all happened really quickly. And we got through it together. And so as I wrote in the book, in those chapters, I just thought I was awful. I mean, I was just really an awful husband, just pushing and pushing. And she gave me a lot of grace in that time. And then from there, so, we could be respectful of time. We got our son, Bo. And then after that, there were a couple surprise pregnancies pretty quickly.
But I will say the adoption of Bo really helped heal us and made me realize that I didn't have to carry a child for the baby to be ours.
What a redemptive moment. That's beautiful. Thank you I know there's so much that has happened in your story, and I really appreciate you giving us an overview of what you've navigated as a couple, and what's brought you here to this space as we honor the many lives that have been part of that story for you.
Thank you.
One of the things that, if you guys or Johnny, Susan, if you guys are willing to give us a little insight here about maybe how you navigated the fissures that came up and the conflict and how you navigated that. And in that, I wonder if you can give us, when I say us, I mean, all couples going through infertility, us, me, the hosts, or our listeners, what would you want to tell us that you learned and how to navigate that conflict well? Does that make sense?
Susan alluded to it earlier on a conflict that we had, that in the dynamic of, male and female in this, I understood that, so much of the chemistry and the biology and everything that was happening was in Susan. So that even when you think of the wording, Susan wasn't pregnant. Certainly back then, we didn't say we are pregnant. I don't even know if I'm a big believer in that today, just in respect to my wife and all that she went through. But it was Susan wasn't pregnant. And Susan, produced this many eggs, or, all those kind of things. It was all about Susan. And so in that, I think for the man, there's a little bit of comfort that it's not my fault. And fully me knowing that half of this is me, but when it's her body that it's happening to, maybe just in the back of my mind somewhere, it was, me supporting her because she was beating herself up. So it wasn't, I could be that supportive guy for her because she was down, that she wasn't getting pregnant. And that worked until when all the inseminations didn't work after a year of those, the doctor said, let's test my sperm and see if it can penetrate an egg. And of course, you can't do that on a human egg. So they sent my sperm to Chicago and tested it with hamsters. And so, ironically, this test was called the hamster test. And what it was meant to do was to see if my sperm can penetrate a hamster's egg. And so we get the phone call and we find out that I failed, and that basically 70% of men could impregnate a hamster's egg better than me. And so as we sat on the floor, I can remember sitting on the floor in the family room, leaning up against the couch, and I'm crying now, saying literally the words, I can't even impregnate a hamster. This is ridiculous. Like, how bad can I be at impregnating things when I can't even do it with a hamster? So we laughed about it, that there was all these Italian hamsters running around Chicago from that ridiculous test that we had to do. And so we had that shift in the conflict to then it appeared that it was all my fault. And this was a new dynamic in the last 3 years. And that felt weird. It felt different that I now felt responsible. Maybe it gave Susan a little bit of a break on how she was feeling. We had some good laughs over it at the same time because the absurdity of the whole conversation, seemed to be just funny. And then when we started in vitro and went and, I said to the doctor, look, we understand this has been all my fault. I can't impregnate the hamster egg. And he was like, that test is ridiculous. We don't need to rely on that. And, we ended up fertilizing 23 out of 24 eggs. So, you have those moments of things shifting. And for us in that, we had some fun with it in the laughing at it, but at the same time, me feeling responsible. So that was our version of conflict, I would say.
Yeah, we were pretty lucky. We were really on the same page through the whole journey of our infertility. A couple things here and there, but I would say for the most part, we really, and Johnny mentioned our vows earlier. One of the parts of our vows at our wedding was, I'll see your viewpoint in all as you must see mine. And I think we really took that seriously because we really tried to put, I would try to put myself in his shoes. He tried to put himself in my shoes. And, we relied on God. I mean, through his grace, got us through that. And we were on the same page with our faith too. So I think that made a huge difference for us.
That's so powerful. And I think that when we talk about conflict, a lot of times it's, couples need to have conflict. Whenever couples tell me, whether if it's out in the wild or on the therapy couch, that they don't have conflict, and I say, well, that's not great. We need to have conflict because we're made differently. It's just how we navigate that conflict. It's how we do the conflict. And what we want to shy away from is criticizing each other, being defensive. You mentioned, Susan, seeing each other's point of view, and Ginny and I have actually talked about that part of your book and how beautiful that vow is, taking each other's point of view and assuming goodwill of each other. So whenever you talk about the hamster test, Johnny, so whenever my wife and I were going through infertility, she went through all these tests, and it was, it's unexplained infertility. We don't know what it is, and they just offhandedly tested my sperm, and the nurse came in just while we were sitting in one of the clinic rooms. We were just sitting there, and she just offhandedly opened the door and said, "Oh, by the way, your morphology, Clay, is just terrible, and it's male factor infertility. So we're going to have to do IVF. So, the doctor's going to come in and talk to you guys about that. But now we've got some answers." And then she left, and I remember what my wife was wearing. I remember the smell of the room. I remember there was a little Keurig with K-cups around it, and I remember what the coffee labels were. And when we were walking out, I couldn't look at her. I couldn't look at my wife. I felt such a heavy burden of shame. And I think there's a lot of, for the men that are listening to this, there is a lot of connection between virility, getting my wife pregnant, and masculinity. But something that I hear, Susan, that you and my wife Marjorie had in common is that Marjorie never shamed me. She never said, "Oh, this is your fault that we're going through this." She never criticized me. She supported me. She even told me one time when we were considering adoption, she said, "I would love to consider adoption, but I would love for this baby to have you in it because we need more Clay in the world." And I remember her saying that, and just how uplifting that was. And it sounds like that, you guys had a lot of that same energy back and forth as you were navigating the highs and the lows, that we're doing this together. And it's all on the foundation of love for each other. It's a beautiful thing, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. The world does need more Clay, by the way, because you've got a really good heart and you're a good man. So you're making an impact out there. And for all the couples like us, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Oh, it's and I'd say the world, the world is a better place because you guys are in it and you've built this beautiful family. And I always see the therapy space, and now as we're starting the show, this space as a sacred space to sit in, to hear couple stories, and to know a little bit more about how we as a couple can turn towards each other in the boat and not jump ship.
That's right.
Yep.
And as a final thought from us, I mean, what we're thankful of is that we raised 3 kids in Bo, Bella, and Stone that love and honor their older brothers and sister. And that's when we feel as parents, something that we've done well is developing their hearts to love siblings that they never met and to have a relationship with them, and they do. And so it's that kind of rounds out our family in a really sweet way.
In a very, sacred way. It's very special, unique, and beautiful. It's, on all that wrapped together. Well, I have a feeling that this is not going to be the last time that we have a conversation on this show. I hope, and I pray that we'll have continued conversations and as we build just a relationship together. You guys are wonderful, amazing, and beautiful. Once again, the book is, if you're watching on YouTube, you can just see it here. Life is Hard, but I'll Be Okay. And it's a wonderful book. You can hear a little bit more about Johnny and Susan's story there, and a little bit more about how they stayed bonded as a couple through that experience, but also what they learned, I think, individually, and what they learned for their family. So thank you guys again for joining us. We really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you guys.
Nice
That's
meeting
it.
you.